All right, good afternoon. In a very short while, we're going to be joined by Diane Corner, the Deputy Special Representative of the Secretary General and Deputy Head of the UN Mission in the Central African Republic. She'll be joining us by video link from Bangui to give you an update on the situation in that country. The Special Coordinator for the Middle East Peace Process, Nikolai Mladenov, said today that the hunger strike by Palestinian detainees protesting against their conditions in Israeli jails enters its second month. It is imperative that a resolution be found as soon as possible, in line with international humanitarian law and Israel's human rights obligation, Mr. Mladenov said. With growing tensions on the Palestinian streets, Mr. Mladenov hopes that current efforts will result in an immediate resolution to the matter, which is in the interest of peace and ongoing initiatives to revive a political process. And he calls on all actors to exercise maximum restraint, show responsibility, and take all necessary steps to avoid escalating tensions. On Syria, on the humanitarian front, we are very much alarmed by reports of an attack on the Al-Kareb al-Safiyeh village in the eastern countryside of Hama today, reportedly resulting in the deaths of dozens of civilians, the majority of whom are women and children. A large number of people were also reportedly injured due to missile shelling. In addition to the people killed and injured, several people are reportedly missing and believed to have been kidnapped. We do not have further information at this time on the incident or who may be responsible. And the special envoy for Syria, Staffan de Mistura, continues to facilitate the talks in Geneva. And as you will have seen, he issued a press release earlier today on his intention to establish a technical process to address constitutional and legal issues in the context of the intra-Syrian talks. And from Iraq, our humanitarian colleagues in that country warn that there has been a sharp increase in the number of people fleeing western Mosul as fighting has intensified in the area. Lise Grande, the humanitarian coordinator for Iraq, said the numbers of people fleeing their homes in western Mosul are overwhelming. Large numbers of families are on the move and are leaving everything behind. She added that the number of people who are moving are now so large that it's becoming more difficult to ensure civilians receive the assistance and protection they need. As military operations intensify, a move closer to Mosul's Old City area, we expect up to 200,000 people may flee. She also added that without the generosity of people in other parts of Mosul City who are opening their homes and looking after displaced families from the western Mosul, the camps would have been overwhelmed long ago. As of today, the humanitarian response plan for Iraq, requesting $985 million, is currently 28% funded. Under the 2017 plan, approximately $331 million is being sought for the Mosul operation. And this afternoon, the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, will leave New York for Brussels. Tomorrow, she will participate in the Foreign Affairs Council on Development and meet with senior European Union officials, as well as heads of UN system entities. The Deputy Secretary General will travel further to Switzerland tomorrow, where she will join the 13th Seminar of Special Representatives and Envoys that the Secretary General is attending near Geneva, and she'll be back here on Saturday. And the World Health Organization today said the medical experts are racing against the clock to contain the outbreak of Ebola in the Lekati health zone in a remote part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the area, as you know, borders the Central African Republic. The zone is about 1,400 kilometers from Kinshasa, 350 kilometers from the nearest major town, Kisangani. There are only 20 kilometers of paved roads in the area and virtually no functional telecommunications. Speaking to the press in Geneva, the executive director of WHO's Health Emergency Program, Peter Salama, said the first Ebola treatment center in Lekati General Hospital has been established. Protective gear has been dispatched to health workers and a mobile lab is being constructed and will be deployed in the area. Immediate repairs to the airstrips and telecommunications infrastructure are being carried out to allow the operation to continue successfully. And our friends at UNICEF inform us that the global number of refugees and migrant children moving alone has reached a record high, increasingly nearly fivefold since 2010. According to UNICEF's latest report, which was released today, at least 300,000 children were unaccompanied or separated from their families while on the move in the years of 2015 and 2016, up from 66,000 in 2010. UNICEF says an increasing number of these children are taking highly dangerous routes, often at the mercy of smugglers and traffickers, to reach their destinations, clearly justifying the need for a global protection system to keep them safe from exploitation, abuse, and death. And our colleagues at the World Meteorological Organization have issued a report ranking the deadliest weather events, such as cyclones, tornadoes, lightning, and hailstorms. Cyclones top the list of the deadliest weather event, and with the deadliest cyclone being a tropical cyclone that hit Bangladesh in 1970, which killed 300,000 people. Tornadoes come in second, followed by lightning strikes and hailstorms. This is the first time that WMO is highlighting the impact of specific weather events, and the agency says it is doing so to raise awareness of the impacts of climate change and the need to increase resilience measures. More detail at WMO. And today, two countries, Barbados and Indonesia, have taken us over the century mark. So we are now, the honor roll is now at 101. We thank them both. And before we go to Ms. Corner, I'll take some questions. Matthew.
Sure, thanks a lot. I want to ask about Burundi and WIPO. In Burundi, there's been grenade attacks followed by mass arrests in this Musaga neighborhood, which is one of the most involved in protests against the government. So particularly given the mass arrests, I'm just wondering, I'd asked you before a couple of Burundi questions. Has Mr. Kafando begun his work yet? And if so, what does he say about these developments?
I don't have an update on Burundi, but I'll see what I can get for you.
And if you could, on the World Intellectual Property Organization and its patent work in North Korea, U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley has said in response to a question that WIPO should have informed the Council of its patent applications, and its failure to do so may have dangerous consequences. So what I'm wondering is, I know that you'd said you'd sort of just cited to statements by others. What I'm wondering is, from the top of the UN system, both in light of this comment and just otherwise, given the launches and given what WIPO has done, what has the Secretariat done in terms of speaking with WIPO about?
Well, I think WIPO has put out a fairly clear press release explaining in detail the patent application process and how it relates to existing sanctions regime. So I think, to me, that explanation is fairly clear, and I would direct your questions to them.
So you're saying that Antonio Guterres accepts WIPO?
No, I'm just saying what I just said.
Right, but he's the head of the system.
I understand. I'm saying they have put out a very clear explanation.
You use some other adjective. I just want to know, do you accept their...
I'm answering your question in the best possible use of the English language that I have. Oleg, and then we'll go.
Thank you, Stefan. On Ukraine, there were two draft laws introduced that will have some restrictions for the activities of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, and there is some discussion happening whether this could be considered discriminatory practice or some form of violation of religious freedoms. And I know that the Russian Patriarch sent a letter to the Secretary General, among a number of other leaders, including the Russian president, the Ukrainian president, calling for taking measures not to adopt this law. I wonder if you could confirm whether this letter was received, and also what is the SG's view on this issue?
We do our best not to comment on draft laws, so I will heed that motto at this point. But obviously, as a matter of principle, we stand for people's freedom to worship. But obviously, we're not going to comment on the details of something that's in draft. Yep.
Stefan, why took Mr. Mladenov so long to issue a statement? Was it for the fact that people on the ground in Ramallah and other places in Palestine blocked the UN entrances and accused it of collaborating or being silent on what's happening?
I don't think the UN has been silent. I think we've said from this podium right from the start that this was an issue being looked at from the UN and from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and we've been flagging that repeatedly. I think in his own statement, Mr. Mladenov acknowledged the tensions that exist in the Palestinian amongst Palestinian civilians as a result of the ongoing hunger strike.
I have a follow-up.
Yeah.
But it took him like more than 30 days to issue such a statement.
I think
And
Mr. Mladenov spoke out when he felt it was the right moment to speak out.
Is there somebody, did the UN request to enter the Israeli prisons and to meet with the Palestinian
that
prisoners?
would be something you would have to ask for human rights colleagues. Yes, Carol.
Stefan, I wanted to ask about the Venezuelan opposition leader who's supposed to meet with the Human Rights Commissioner, but apparently he's not been allowed to leave the country.
I don't know. I'd heard that there may be such a meeting. I'll just before I came in, I'll follow up and see what the situation is. Edie.
I wondered whether you had any comment on the killing of a Palestinian protester and the wounding of an AP photographer today in clashes in the northern West Bank.
Yes, I've seen. I have seen those reports, and I know Mr. Mladenov condemns the reported killing of a Palestinian by an Israeli settler and the wounding of a photographer in the occupied West Bank. Mr. Mladenov added that this deplorable incident must be promptly and thoroughly investigated and those responsible prosecuted. Carol, then we'll go to Matthew, then we'll go to our guest.
Actually, it was a request. Next week, the Secretary General is having his luncheon with the Security Council. Mm-hmm. Could he come to speak to us afterwards?
We will place that request.
Many questions.
You do.
Million questions.
Indeed. Matthew.
Sure. I want to ask you about UN security. Intercity Press has published a memo to Mr. Peter Drennan, the head of DSS, basically in which it's alleged that Mr. Drennan buried a report of death threats against Irina Bakova, that a DSS contingent was sent to write such a report. The person writing the report, citing a fear of retaliation, has cited the Baghdad and Algiers previous attacks and has said that Mr. Drennan buried the report in part for personal political reasons in case Ms. Bakova became SG. And I think it's a pretty serious.
Okay, I'm not going to comment on.
He's
something.
responded to
I'm
it,
saying
so.
I have not going to comment on something I haven't seen. So
can you get a comment?
If I learn of something,
as soon as you can?
I will. I always do things as soon as I can.